Hey, job seekers, tired of doing interviews and not landing the job? All right, let me tell you 5 huge mistakes that you might be making when you're doing interviews. Now, I've been doing this for over 30 years and I see these 5 mistakes happen continuously and get feedback from my clients that here's why they didn't get the job. All right, let's start with number one. Number one is not giving enough specific information when you're doing an answer to a question. Now, let me explain this a little bit more. This happens most when we're talking, when they ask you like a behavioral based interview question. So this would be an example of tell me a time when you worked on a project that didn't go as smoothly as planned and what you did. Now, some people will come in and approach this question very 30,000 foot level and say things like, well, when you're doing project management, you have to follow these guidelines. And when you're working with a team, you have to do the following things. That is not what they're looking for when you're doing an interview. You have to be more specific on the answers that you're giving. You want to be able to explain back to them what was the example or what was the exact thing, project that you worked on? What was the issue? How did you approach the issue? And what was the end result? They want to know the story. That's why they're asking you a behavioral based question. If you don't focus in on all of those different segments, they're going to think, oh, they're just quoting book knowledge to me, and they don't really have any true experience doing this. Now, it can be hard to think of these when you're when you're in an interview and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I think about this? You can actually practice this. We actually have we have a whole group of videos that will help you do this to practice, but there's lots of other ways that you can practice. Practice with a friend, use Chat GPT to get interview questions and answers. The more you practice for an interview for things like this, the more you're going to be able to be detailed and give them the data that they want. They're trying to check your behaviors, your skills, and your results. So make sure you give them all those when you're actually doing answers to these questions. Okay, what is the number 2 thing that we see that rules candidates out? It's talking too much. Now, I just told you to make sure you give all these specifics, and now I'm telling you not to talk too much. What's the right answer? When I'm telling you about talking too much, there will be times where we will ask a candidate a question and they will go on for like 20 minutes, just going and going and talking and talking. You can't do that. You can't do that. You need to have answers that give the data but are short and succinct. If you are just going on even a 10-minute rant of talking and talking, you're losing your audience. You're losing your audience. Make sure that you are keeping your interview answers concise, not too concise that you're not sharing what's important, but don't ramble. And how do you make it so you don't ramble? Practice, practice, practice. Make sure you take the time to do that. Okay, the number 3 thing, oh my goodness, this is an easy one to fix, but people make this mistake all the time. And that is doing no research on the company before you walk into that interview. Now, I don't care if it's a phone interview or if it's a face-to-face interview, if it's a video interview. If you have the company's name before you start that interview, which I realize if it's a confidential role, you may not, but otherwise, you need to do research. You need to go out, take the time, look at the company's website, look at some of their current products, and don't just do I spent, 30 seconds on it, I'm done. Take the time to do some research. Do you want them talking to you without having looked at your resume and looked at some of your background? No. Well, they don't want it either. There are so many times candidates get ruled out because they think that you're not hungry or don't care about the role, or the fact that you just don't have any kind of lead through because you're not doing the research. This is an easy one to fix. Take some time and do the research on the company and some of their products and such before you walk in the door. Okay, number 4 is being arrogant. There is a fine line between being proud of your accomplishments and having that drive to go forward and being arrogant. And if you come across too heavy and too hard, and if you come out too judgmental against your past companies and your past projects, you come off as very arrogant. And people want to work with people that they like. People do not want to work with people that they think they're going to walk in the door and be a problem. You want to be humble. It's okay to be proud of your accomplishments. It's okay to be a subject matter expert and to even display that you're a subject matter expert. Just be careful you're not going over that fine line of being arrogant. And I know sometimes you can be frustrated. If you are an executive level candidate, you're a VP of engineering for a Fortune 100 company, and you're talking with a talent acquisition person who just graduated, who really doesn't even understand your role. I understand it can be frustrating with some of the questions that they may ask you. Everybody's got a place in the world and they're doing the best they can. It would be much better for you to show some patience with them than to come across as arrogant. Okay, our number 5, or the top one that I see of people where they miss when they're doing these interviews, is not tailoring the answers that you're given through the lens of the person that's asking them. Now, what do I mean by that? If a CFO is asking you, or a controller is asking you questions about how do you accomplish this in this manufacturing setting, they're looking at it from a numbers, a CFO controller perspective. So when you are giving answers, don't go focused on something that's totally not tied to the numbers. Try to give an answer that focuses down the way that they think. Another example of this is if you're applying for an HR manager position in a manufacturing location and you're talking with the manufacturing director, and all that you're talking about is HR programs and policies from corporate, instead of talking about the HR work that you've done business partnering in the past with manufacturing, you're missing it. You have to try and answer these questions through the lens of the person that's asking you, because that's the world that they understand. That's the numbers, that's the figures that they have a connection to. So the more that you can answer through that lens and try to tailor your interview questions to the person that's asking them, the better the chance that you're going to have of actually getting an offer from that company. All right, job seekers, keep going. You are worthy of a great job, a great career, and most importantly, a great life. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.